The sun was sinking low over the dusty highway, painting the sky with streaks of orange and crimson. The sound of roaring engines echoed through the quiet town as a group of bikers pulled into Maggie's Diner, the only place open for miles. Their bikes gleamed under the fading light, heavy chrome beasts that looked both beautiful and dangerous. Inside, the smell of coffee, grease, and fresh pie filled the air. Locals glanced up nervously as the men entered. Leather jackets, steel boots, tattoos, they looked like trouble. But those who truly knew them understood they were more than just outlaws. They were brothers who had each other's backs and helped those who couldn't help themselves. At the head of the group was Hawk, tall, broad-shouldered, with stormy eyes that carried the weight of 100 stories. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. His crew, Razor, Tank, Ghost, and Stitch, filled the booth beside him, their laughter rumbling through the room as Maggie herself poured coffee into their mugs. It was supposed to be a quiet evening ride, nothing more. Then the diner door creaked open. Everyone turned. A small boy stood there, no older than 7, barefoot and trembling. His clothes were torn, his knees scraped, and his eyes, wide, terrified, darted around the room. In his hand, he clutched a small, worn-out teddy bear missing an arm. The laughter died instantly. Hawk's sharp gaze softened. The boy took a hesitant step forward, his lip quivering, and then he stumbled. Hawk was out of his seat in seconds, catching him before he hit the floor. "Hey, easy there, kid," Hawk said, his deep voice gentle. "You okay? You lost." The boy looked up at him, tears spilling down his cheeks. He tried to speak, but only a broken sob came out. Maggie hurried over with a glass of water, and the boy took a shaky sip. Everyone waited, even the locals who moments ago had been trying to avoid the bikers' eyes. Hawk crouched to meet the boy's gaze, his hand resting lightly on the child's shoulder. Finally, the boy whispered, his voice trembling so faintly that Hawk had to lean closer to hear him. They took my sister." The words hit like a thunderclap. Hawk froze. The crew exchanged glances, Razor's jaw clenched, Ghost's eyes narrowed, and Tank's massive hands curled into fists. "Who took her, kid?" Hawk asked carefully, but there was steel in his tone now. The boy's lower lip quivered again. "A man in a black van, he said he'd help us find our mom, but he drove off with her." The diner went silent. Hawk straightened slowly, the calm in his eyes replaced by something far more dangerous, a burning promise. He looked at his crew, then back at the boy. "Don't worry, kid," Hawk said quietly. "We'll find her." And in that moment, everyone in the diner knew, the bikers weren't leaving until they did. Hawk's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Tank, Razor, Ghost, we ride." There was no hesitation, no need for further explanation. The moment the boy's trembling words left his lips, the men were already on their feet. They had seen the worst kind of evil in this world, and this, a child taken, was something none of them could stand by and ignore. Maggie rushed to the counter. "Wait, you don't even know where they went," she cried, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. Hawk placed a hand over hers. "We'll find them faster than the cops ever could," he said, his voice low but steady. "But call them anyway. Tell them we'll bring the kids back." Then he turned to the boy, who stood clutching his teddy bear, eyes wide and scared. "Kid," Hawk said gently, kneeling to meet his gaze, "you remember anything? The road, maybe, a sign, anything at all?" The boy sniffled, trying to think. It was a black van, with a sticker on the back. A red snake. He drove toward the woods, past the gas station. Razor pulled out his phone and brought up a map. "That leads to Old Mill Road, dead end near the forest." Hawk nodded once. "That's our lead. Tank, you stay close with the kid. The rest, mount up." The roar of engines filled the night once again, shaking the ground beneath their boots. Headlights sliced through the darkness as they sped down the highway, wind whipping against their faces. Hawk rode at the front, every sense sharpened, scanning the road for any sign of that van. His mind raced. He had seen too many headlines, too many missing posters. This wasn't going to be one of those stories. Not tonight. At the diner, Tank rode behind them with the boy safely tucked in his leather jacket. The child gripped the big man's vest tightly, whispering prayers that his sister was still okay. Tank's heart ached. He had lost a little sister once too, years ago. That pain had never really left him. Tonight, he'd make sure this boy didn't have to feel the same. After 15 minutes of riding, Hawk raised his hand, signaling a stop. Razor pointed to the dirt beside the road, fresh tire tracks leading off into the trees. Van's been here, not long ago. They followed the trail into the woods, the rumble of their engines fading to a low growl. The moonlight flickered through the branches as the path narrowed. Then, in the distance, Hawk saw it, the faint glimmer of metal. A black van sat parked near an old, abandoned barn, half hidden by the shadows. Bingo, Razor muttered. Hawk's expression hardened. Kill the lights. The bikers dismounted, moving silently, their boots crunching on dry leaves. Somewhere inside that barn, a faint cry echoed, a small, terrified voice calling out for help. Hawk's pulse quickened. He turned to the boy. Is that her? He whispered. The boy nodded, his tiny hand gripping Hawk's arm. That's my sister. And that was all Hawk needed to hear. His jaw tightened as he gave the signal. The hunt was over. It was time to bring her home. The bikers crept closer to the old barn, their bodies tense, their eyes scanning every shadow. The place smelled of oil, rust, and fear. Faint moonlight filtered through the broken roof, illuminating bits of shattered glass and old tools scattered across the floor. Somewhere inside, a muffled sob echoed again, the sound of a frightened little girl. Hawk's chest tightened. He turned to his men and gave a quick hand signal. Razor and Ghost flanked the left side, Tank circled behind. Hawk stepped forward quietly, each footfall deliberate. Then, without warning, a loud creak split the silence, the sound of a door hinge. A flashlight beam flickered inside. A man's voice, rough and cruel, barked, "Stop crying, or all." He never finished the sentence. Hawk slammed his boot into the door, sending it flying open with a deafening crash. The man spun around, startled, a lanky figure with greasy hair and a wild look in his eyes. He barely had time to react before Razor lunged and slammed him against the wall. "Let her go," Hawk roared, his voice thundering through the barn. The man struggled, eyes darting toward the back door, but Ghost was already there, blocking his escape. Tank moved straight for the girl, a small child, tied to a chair, her cheeks streaked with tears. She flinched when Tank approached, but his voice was soft as he said, "It's okay, sweetheart. We're friends." He cut her loose gently, wrapping his leather jacket around her trembling shoulders. Meanwhile, Razor pressed the kidnapper to the floor as Hawk knelt beside him. "You picked the wrong town, the wrong girl," Hawk said coldly. "You even look at a child again, and I swear, police are on the way," Ghost interrupted, holding up his phone. He'd called Maggie's diner earlier, giving her their coordinates. Hawk nodded, then turned to the siblings. The boy was already inside, running to his sister. The two children threw their arms around each other, sobbing in relief. Hawk's hardened face softened at the sight. Minutes later, flashing blue and red lights filled the clearing. The kidnapper was dragged away, still shouting nonsense, but no one paid him any mind. The bikers stood silently beside their motorcycles, the night air heavy but calm again. The little girl looked up at Hawk with wide, grateful eyes. "You're like heroes," she whispered. Hawk smiled faintly. "Nah," he said, "just people who don't turn away." As the officers loaded the children into the police car, the boy broke free for a moment and ran to Hawk. "Wait," he held out his worn teddy bear, the one missing an arm. "You keep this, for helping us." Hawk crouched down, taking it gently. "Tell you what," he said, his voice low and steady. "You hold onto it for me, and when we meet again, you can give it back." The boy nodded through his tears, and the bikers watched as the car disappeared down the road. Hawk glanced at his crew. "Let's ride." Engines roared once more, echoing through the forest. And as the night swallowed their sound, the legend began, of the bikers who didn't wait a second when a little boy whispered, "They took my sister."